This is a colourful and interesting account of a slightly hair-raising trip to the remote islands of northern Vanuatu. And so we are on our way, and at Luganville, Santo Airport, waiting for our onward flights, which did not happen because they had been cancelled due to the waterlogged runway at our destination. So we had to find alternative means of getting to this island, and we didn't know how. Local ships weren't serving these islands. Charter was going to cost us 6,000 New Zealand dollars. So Neil, who had bought his bagpipes, decided to play Amazing Grace, which was a very sensible thing to do. He also decided he would pray for someone with a bandaged foot in the airport lounge, and this happened to be a fellow with his relatives who knew the phone number of the invisible priest on the far island we were trying to get in touch with. And he also said, look, there's a flight leaving in half an hour, about the only one that was flying it seems, to the civil intermediate island of Gaua. You can at least get yourself there, talk to this man on that far island and organise a boat. So we took the flight, and here we are coming into the little island of Gaua. You can see the runway at the end there. We know nobody here. No one knows we are here. And there's the airport building and the 16-seater we came in on. So what do? Well, there's the taxi at the back, and it goes all around this island of about 2,000 people. But we don't know where we go. Oh, there's the aviation fuel depot, and there's our runway. And there goes our flight. Okay, we are here. What do? Well, we hung around, and then somebody turned up, not speaking very good English, who said, come to my father's bungalow. So we wandered along to the bungalow, of which unfortunately we have no pictures. But this was a man called Charles, who was an SDA man. He had a sick wife, he had 2 deaf daughters, he had a brother who had a stroke. He said, stay in my bungalow. So we stayed there, and we prayed for all the sick members of his family with good results. This is the main road on the island, and it looks like we're trying to find a store following the leader here. Probably the only store on the island, we suspect. Island is prolific, grows anything. Don't even know what this is. Grapefruit are so enormous you could drown in them. In the meantime, our friend Charles had got in touch with the Anglican Vicar General on the far island, who got in touch with a local priest on this island and said, please look after these people, I need them on my island. And this is Lynette, who generally looked after us and cooked for us. She was a lovely gift from God. This is the kitchen in the area where we ate, and that's where we ate. And out the window, we can see this far country, this place we've yet got to get to, the island of Vanua. At this point, we make the discovery that the synod that we were going to be attending on the far island has been postponed for a month. So one of the main reasons for coming is no longer there. But here we are on this village of Namasari, and there is Father Ken. He's the Anglican priest in a village of about 250 people, and he wants us to have a mission there. So here we are preparing for the mission. These people love to sing. The team at the back, 4 hardy souls and their leader, the Reverend Alan Johns from Christchurch, who is the National Director of SOMA. So this is, believe it or not, this is sort of high church, high Anglican. That's Andrew beginning to minister and explain that you can't have Jesus and witchcraft. And this is a story. Somebody whizzed past us on the road on a 4-wheel bike, and we said, who's that? And they said, he's the flying doctor. So we found it just by the airport. He had his hangar and his clinic. And there he is there on the right. He's an Australian, been here about 18 years, providing medical services to these remote islands. There's one of his earlier planes. So he just said that he could fly us to Vanua, our destination. So we thought, hooray! God is good. Then we found later in the day that he'd crashed his plane. Oops. So we returned happily to our digs at Lamasari village and continued to pray all day for the sick and blind and deaf with very good results. It was a bit too intrusive to take video and photographs when people were being prayed for, but we had a big lineup of people wanting healing, and there were definitely healings. Sight, hearing, joints, people testified to it. In the meantime, the only messages that were coming to us very erratically from the far island was that there was no petrol, there were no captains prepared to go out in the seas. They were too rough, and we would just have to wait for a boat, but no one knew when the boat was coming or when the weather would settle down or when they'd find petrol. So, amazing grace continues. Then suddenly a message arrived. A boat had come and was waiting for us. None of the messages had reached us, but here was our boat, so down we went. The seas you've been viewing actually look quite calm, don't they? But you're looking inside a reef. And on the other side of the reef, there's big swells and big ocean, and it, no kidding, looked like this. We could not take photos, of course, because we were trying to keep our electronics dry in the cockpit of this banana boat. And bouncing around all over the back were our sailors who said, very rough, very rough. And they were keeping the boat balanced. So it was a very bracing journey, and we sang a lot and spoke in tongues and prayed and gave thanks to God. Arrived in Vanuatu, Sola, which is the capital, drenched to the skin, and spent the next several days trying to dry our clothes out. But this is where we were housed, courtesy of the Diocese of Banks and Torres, a bungalow run privately. What a blessing it was. We found we had landed in the middle of an Anglican mission to these islands, so it couldn't have been more perfectly timed, you might say. There is a strong Christian presence on these islands. The Anglicans were active here 150 to 200 years ago, and there of the entire population of these islands, about 12,000 people, 11,000 or so are found in Anglican churches on Sunday mornings. So it's not hard to preach the gospel here. They know about God, they also know about the spirit world, and they tend to try and combine the two a bit, but we're here to instruct them about a different way. Posiano gave his testimony. Posiano was Samoan, grew up in New Zealand, angry and alienated, got himself into gangs and stealing and a life of crime really until God met him. So great testimony for these young teenagers to hear.
And there was many times where my life was nearly taken because when we had a fight with the other gangs, they bring the machete, we bring the bat.
The following morning fell to pieces again. Father Maurice, whom you have not yet met, was derailed by a family funeral which he had to take, so he was going to take us around the villages so we could pray for the sick, but that didn't happen. Instead, we had a service with Father Johnny, who was a short, irrepressible music-making machine, evangelist. This is a lineup after the service, praying for the sick, Posiano there, we reckon somewhere around 180 healings for the entire trip. Andrew, speaking with someone at the Anglican Diocesan headquarters, random views of some of the beauty of the islands. This was guaranteed to send one of our team into paroxysms of panic. Ginger plant, who knows what? You put anything into the ground, it grows. It could be the breadbasket of the Pacific, some people believe. This is an island funeral, the one that Father Maurice was officiating at his uncle's death. See the meat there and the money in the hand, part of a custom where money and provisions change hands as a symbol of duty of care of the wider family for the bereaved family. Pandanus trees grow all over the island. And here we are now waiting for our boat. If there's Posy, began calling it Posy Gel because he had to have gel for his hair because it was unruly. So here we are going finally to Moto from Vanua, where we have been for the last several days. There's our boat, another banana boat. This time the crossing is not as long. We have now actually arrived on this. Now there is Father Maurice, the invisible Father Maurice, who has been directing our travels from afar. And we are now on the little island of Ra, alongside Moto. This is the place where the synod was to have been held but was cancelled. And this is a welcoming party. On the left there is the irrepressible, the man with the guitar, the irrepressible evangelist for the missions, loves Jesus.
Welcome you, happy pie, with this friends, families and families. You was welcome to the island.
A waterfront view of our bungalows and the dining area where we were superbly looked after. A bit of sunshine actually. This is the view back towards Vanua where we came from today in the boat. It's winter here and they speak of more rain, wind and cold weather than they're used to, even though it was about 26 degrees. So a look along the beachfront. And this is Elizabeth. She looked after the bungalow and she was an absolute sweetie. Wandering down the road to the narrow, shallow strait that separates the little island of Ra from Moto proper. And that's where we were going to be going and doing things in the villages, but Father Maurice had another funeral he had to look after in his home village. There's Father Maurice organising an event ahead on the island, the main village on the island of Moto. Here we are getting there. This is to the Church of St. Barnabas, which is again an Anglican church. That's Father Maurice striding towards us. And we're going to have a training session here. So this is for leaders. This is not for the general population. This is a teaching session. We're teaching them, Andrew is teaching them how to pray for the sick, how to deal with issues involving witchcraft and curses and black magic and spells and divination and love potions and all sorts of things to bring about renunciation of these things before healing can occur. This was a wonderful surprise. We found on the island of Ra, the little island of Ra, alongside Moto, that there is this family of missionaries, they are Bible translators, they are translating the New Testament into a language spoken by only 2,100 people up in these islands where we are now. That is love, if you ever saw it. There's all sorts of deprivations and sickness and problems with transport and communications. Their computers go down because of the very high humidity. They've learned to put production second on God's list and obedience first. There are about 110 indigenous languages in Vanuatu, and 60 are still needing translations. Another slap-up meal at the bungalow care of Elizabeth. Incredible spreads. This is cassava wrapped in cabbage with coconut milk. This is a coconut crab. We have had lobster, which Andrew devoured. He really only came on this trip for the lobster. Can't you just tell? Anyway, there is eating coconut. After this meal, the group took off to an AOG church on Ra, where there was more healing prayer, more renunciation of witchcraft, and more healings. No pictures, I'm sorry. My bowel made me too dangerous to be around, so I begged off that night. Sorry about that. Now we're off again to the island of Moto, and there is Johnny's keyboard. Our evangelist is making sure it goes with him. It goes everywhere. He keeps it going by prayer and ingenuity and some bushcraft. So we're back at St. Barnabas's in the village with the unpronounceable name on the island of Moto, and Johnny has set up, and he's got bits of twigs and all sorts of things holding wires where they need to be. So this is the big compound outside the church, essentially the village square. The same procedure, renunciation of witchcraft and healing prayer and healings, line up to queues. Again, no photos of this. I'm sorry, it's intrusive to do. Then back in the dark to the bungalow, and it looks like another slap-up feed and a farewell. This was taken with a camera that had a dying battery, so I'm sorry, it's poor quality, but you get the ambience. Now it's farewell to the island. We're heading off over the estuary again. Bye-bye to the chooks and to the crabs who make their holes in the sand all over the place. We are catching the local truck come bus to the airport, and we are hoping our flight is leaving. These are our drivers. And this is their brand. So in we pile. Fortunately, I and Robin had a seat in the cab. Our bottoms were getting very raw and sore. So good for a start. This is the main road to the airport. It's about 12 kilometres. It took us about an hour and a half. A two-wheel drive, not a four-wheel drive. This guy had been able to purchase his truck by coming to New Zealand to work and get enough money to come back and set up a business as a taxi operator between the main village on the island and the airport. Fun, huh? we still weren't 100% sure we would be catching a plane. There was apparently a missionary couple arriving in with parts for our translators, and last word was that they were coming, and we had pleaded international status for our tickets, or at least it had been pleaded on our behalf with Air Vanuatu. So we were hopeful that we would get a flight. There'd been nothing into the island for about the last 2 weeks. So we travelled out in faith and trust. Hello. Lo and behold, our arrival at the airport, it is raining again, and this place is called Ablo, and there goes our taxi cum bus off down the runway, back to where it came from, and we are about 4 hours before our flight, so it's a good chance for Neil to play Amazing Grace again, isn't it? This is the check-in disc, smartphone and pencil and a bit of paper. And this is what they do when they're waiting for planes. It's quite an event when a plane lands, and Neil is the centre of attention. People have smartphones and great hairstyles. The piper's taking a break. There were no seats in the airport, so we leaned up against the walls, and some kind person brought us a coconut, drilled a hole, gave us a straw, and we were able to have fresh coconut juice. And look at that, we have a plane. Collective sigh of relief. This flight took us back to Santo, Luganville Airport, where things messed up originally, and we wandered around the island for a couple of hours, then caught a flight to Port Vila. At Vila we met up with the guy sitting at the end of the table, another providential meeting for all sorts of reasons we don't have to go into here, but the whole trip was characterised by the grace of God, by supernatural interventions and superventions. And it was, as they say in Bislama, the local pidgin, "Oh glory, e go back long name long Papa God."